Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back. Uh, if you weren't here last Sunday, we did roll in the new year with Carousel Court, but welcome. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm trying to be better about that this year. Um, and tonight, it is Saturday, and it is Book Club Saturday, which means we get to talk about books, particularly the books that I've read over the week and planned to talk about with all of you. Thank you all for being here. How are you all doing? How is life out there in the interwebs? Doing pretty okay for the, myself, doing pretty okay for the, start of the new year. And, getting into the groove of things, as it were. Back to work, all of those things. So, today is January 6th, 2024. I hope New Year's and Christmas and all the holidays were what you wanted. Last week, we chatted kind of about books in general that I kind of want to read over this year. And in particular, like, the book club part of this that I want to kind of do more community work with. And part of that really came down to the fact that I wanted to be able to interact with you guys as we've been reading. So the plan right now is to read Pierce Brown's Red Rising and Steve Barry's first Cotton Malone thriller mystery history puzzle book, Templar's Legacy, for the 27th is Saturday. I can remember dates. That's why I have a calendar in front of me to help me with this thing. So that we can read those and chat about them on the 27th, and then just have a lot of fun talking about books that we read and thought about and possibly enjoyed and maybe even considered, you know. But how are you all doing? What's life like for you out there in the interwebs? I had a pretty good holiday break. I also had a pretty good what's the word I'm looking for? New Year's, because I got to hang out with all of you all and the Carousel Court crew and see what's up, as it were, and ring in the new year with some funness. Stock takes in a cold store facility. I mean, yeah, no. I'm okay with not. I'm okay with not. Like, you say central heating is not a thing that you have time, and I'm sorry, but I'm sitting looking out here at a snowstorm. Like, snowstorm. I'm okay with being inside and nice and toasty with central heat. Central heat is good. And I hope everybody, you know, if you are on the East Coast of the United States, are not being a crazy person and staying inside for this storm. Don't be out on the roads. That is my suggestion. We are already at, by the way, for those playing along at home, we are currently in Connecticut. We are already at an inch of snow, and it's probably going to keep snowing all the way through tomorrow evening. Welcome in, welcome in. But we're here to talk about books, and specifically the 3 books I read for this week, which were Call of the Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, which is the sequel to The Bone Ships by R.J. Barker, the second in the Tide Child series trilogy. Ancillary Mercy by Ann Leckie, which is the conclusion of the Radakai, I guess is how that's pronounced. Look, it's a sci-fi name. I don't do audiobooks, so I'm just going based on what I've got. And since there's no pronunciation guide, that's what we're gonna get. Radakai trilogy by Ann Leckie, and Mistress of Bhatia House, which is book 4 of the Perveen Perveen Mysteries by Sujata Massey. I'm not saying it's a gauntlet throwdown time. I'm just saying I'm quite happy with my central heat and fireplaces that work. Also glad that I have a dog who is older and of the opinion of, like, why would I want to go out in that? I don't want to go out in that. No, I'm good. Okay. So, for those of you who follow me on YouTube, hi, yes, I have a YouTube. You can follow, if you missed out on anything, you want to check out the VODs, all of that good stuff. I also post on the community tab there pretty frequently. And on the community tab this week, I asked the question, which of this week's book club reads were you most excited for? And the majority of the let's put it this way, 2 people voted. Thank you to the 2 people who voted. And the 2 people who voted said Call of the Bone Ships. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with this big, beautiful, lovely sequel to R.J. Barker's Bone Ships. Call of the Bone Ships. I do like that you can't quite tell because I've got the green screen on and therefore it's kind of a little awkward, but it's a little bit like a bluish green is the accent color here in the letters and down here on the sea dragon's wings and on the spine, right? This is just an aesthetic thing. I really like, excuse me. I really like when books in a trilogy or in a series have a common theme for the cover in the spine for all of the books in the series, but when they also have like something unique about them. And in this case, Call of the Bone Ships, or the first book, The Bone Ships, is red. Call of the Bone Ships is this kind of turquoise, bluey green, blue. And then the third book in this series, The Bone Ships Wake, is like a really mustardy yellow kind of accent color. I like that. It makes it really easy to distinguish all 3 of them in order, but put them all into like, oh, no, here it is. Here's the first book. So it's like, yay, really kind of distinct, easy to follow. Yeah, you see it as orange, but it's like a really goldenrod kind of mustard color, sort of less orange. Yeah, it's a kind of goldenish-y, yellow, orangey color. But I like that because it gives you the theme. Yeah, they are really cool covers. They are very, very cool covers that kind of like give you this nice transition from the first book. Like, do they have, I'm just checking because I also like to shout out artists, right? Like, okay, come on, find me a copyright page. Okay. Cover design and lettering by Hannah Wood. Very interesting. Cover illustration, copyright Edward Bettison. Okay, so the cover design and lettering is by Hannah Wood. The illustration is by Edward Bettison, Bettison. And then the inside images, I'm betting that also includes the map, is by Tom Parker. And these books all have really beautiful. I don't know if you can kind of make it out like that, kind of. Chapter art cover, or initial art for the cover for each chapter. And so when you go from book 1, which is the Bone Ships, to book 2, which is Call of the Bone Ships, you know, you kind of get this nice little transition. And then when you go from Call of the Bone Ships to Bone Ships Wake, they have really nice theme, nice design, but they're all distinctive, right? Like, they're all unique, but they are all, they're connected, and I like that. I like that effort went into that. I also like, not gonna lie, I like these big, you know, if you're gonna charge me hardcover prices for a paperback, give me a big floppy trade paperback, you know, that opens up without breaking the spine. Also, side note, thank you, whoever at Orbit decided that this was the important part of putting the series number on the spine of the book. Thank you. I appreciate that. I so appreciate that. Like, give me a book series where I can tell which volume is 1, 2, and 3 if I've never even picked the books up. Like, don't make me have to go through hunting through the book to determine what is the series order for this book. But let's kind of talk about this book. This is the, yeah, exactly. This is the sequel. So it's the second book in the trilogy. I'm going to put the spoiler tag up now. Because I don't know what people consider spoilers anymore. Like, just generic information, is that considered spoilers? Is, like, the blurb on the back of the book considered spoilers? I don't know anymore. But I'm going to put the spoiler tag up and kind of go there from that. So, Call of the Bone Ships is the second book in the trilogy. And one of the things that most second books suffer from is being the transition point. You know, from book 1 to book 3, because they need to have a conclusion, but they can't have too much of a conclusion because they need to have a conclusion in book 3. All of this. This book does that very well. I think it does very, very well. It also does a very good job of being a concrete story while, you know, like I said, it's a concrete story. Like, there is a full book, you know, full story in here that ties to the overarching plot that is the story of the Tide Child, which is the ship that we're focused on in this series. And which is important. Oh, hey, Faye, welcome in. And it has a conclusion, right? Like, this story ends. And there's the setup for book 3 and the setup for the conclusion and the setup of the end of the trilogy and all of that. Excuse me. But it doesn't... It doesn't suffer from a problem that I noticed in the Leckie trilogy, and we'll get to that. But these were very well written. It also did a very, very, very good job of doing something that someone else I watch on YouTube, was it Elliot Brooks? Yes, Elliot Brooks. I'll drop her YouTube channel in the chat. I like listening to her, but one of the things she why is YouTube unsubscribing from things? Okay, here we go. I'll drop that in the chat, and when I put this up on YouTube, I'll make sure to link her as well. But there are times when you go into another book in the series, and for some people it could be like months between volumes, particularly if you're reading this, or it could be years, particularly if you're reading an ongoing series and you read the last book and then you go to read the next book and it's been like 18 months, maybe longer. If you're a Patrick Rothfuss fan, the answer is never. But but a lot of those books just kind of drop you back in and assume that remember all of these people and what they're doing and where they are and what's going on. This one does a really, really great job of setting up and calling back to points that you're like, oh yeah, that's who this is. Oh yeah, that's who that is. Without, giving you a general kind of like rough synopsis in the beginning of the book of what happened in book one, while fitting it into the story of this book and not making it seem forced. Like, there are some people that really make it seem forced, and then there are some people who can do it well, and then there are some people who just don't. And this R.J. Barker has been so far someone who can do it well. You get a little bit of like, this is what happened in the last book, and there's a 6-month time jump between the end of book one and the beginning of book two. And the book tells you that, right? Like, it straight up tells you it's been 6 months since these events ended, and this is where the ship is now. Like, okay, I can free my mind around this. I've got this kind of set up. You ended on kind of like a very interesting, not quite cliffhanger, but questions about certain people in, like, certain characters in the book, who they are, where they are, what they're doing, at the end of book one. And now you're into book two, and you're like, okay, there was this question, this event happened, and now you're into book two, and you're like, okay, so how are things going with certain characters? Because, drama was happening, right? Like, there were things that happened at the end of book one that you're like, So it's very good at keeping both the tone of the book and giving you the information that you need, which I think is a very important skill to have. I also like that, like I said, this is a concrete story. It is a very, it's a very encapsulated story. It's its own plot that ties to the larger plot, but it is an entirely separate plot from book one, and its conclusion leads you into what will become the impetus for the plot for book three, but is in of itself its own story, and I love that. I love that. Now, book one was dark. Book two, okay, let's just put this out there. Book two, the blurb on the back, we're just going to talk about the blurb on the back of the book. When dying slaves are discovered in the bowels of a ship, like, that's the opening line of the synopsis for this book. Opening clause. When dying slaves are discovered in the bowels of a ship. Okay. Like, book one dealt with, book one, you're like, the synopsis is, oh, we're gonna go save this sea dragon, and that'll be just like a fun little adventure. And then you read the book and you're like, oh, hi, boat of the ship of the dead. Hi, I have the spoiler tag up for a reason, everyone, if you haven't read book 1 yet. It's not really a spoiler because it's kind of the first chapter, and the first chapter is just important, but the main character, Joran, I was like, I had to make sure I pronounced his name correctly. Joran is the primary character, although everyone on the ship and Mies, who will be the captain, who is called a shipwife in this world. Also, can we just hold and pause for a minute? Total tangent. But can we respect the hell out of a fantasy author who creates his own terminology for the world in which he's living, tied to the cultures in which he's created, and then proceeds to give you a lexicon in the book as part of the appendices, so you know what he's saying? Thank you. Just saying. Thank you. I love that. I love that detail and richness. It adds to the world and the thought that went into it. But Joran is on this ship, and everyone on this ship has been condemned for capital crime. You know, it's a prison ship, right? Like, this is a ship of people who've been convicted of various crimes and sent to sea on a shitty ship that shouldn't last very long, with the expectation that, well, you know what, they can still serve our country by being on a crappy boat and dying for us in the middle of this war. Yeah, it's a ship of the damned, right? Like, this is a ship of the damned. This is a black ship, a ship of the dead. That's not in the synopsis of book 1, by the way. Like, that is not in the synopsis of book 1. But I want you to stop and think about the fact that the darkness... Whoever writes the backs of these books for Orbit decided to bury the lead on the ship of the damned aspect about this book, but leads you into line 1 of book 2 with, when dying slaves are discovered in the bowels of a ship... Like, motherfucker, if it's that level of dark, I know how dark book 1 is. I also know how dark, quote-unquote dark, Gods of the Weirdwood is. I know how Orbit kind of buries the lead frequently in writing the summaries of these books. What is gonna break my soul in this book that you lead with slavery? I'm just putting that out there. I love that time. So Time of Gifts gives us the historical trivia. Gladstone, who was the Prime Minister of England one of the Prime Ministers of England during the Victorian era, had the Speaker suspended days sitting of Parliament in England when a new part of The Woman in White got published. It was remembering, of course, that all of these Victorian novels were originally published in serials, and Gladstone was, looking back, Gladstone was really into certain things. But also, back to Call of the Bone Ships. So, back to the synopsis. I should actually start with the actual first sentence, which is like the header sentence, the catchy sentence. Dragons have returned to the 100 Isles, but their return heralds war and destruction. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where we ended book 1. When dying slaves are discovered in the bowels of a ship, shipwife Mies and the crew of the Tide Child find themselves drawn into a vicious plot that will leave them questioning their loyalties and fighting for their lives. I'm like, And again, I have my rule. I will not give you any actual spoilers from beyond the first 100 pages, because this book is literally 490 pages. Also, can we just take a minute to appreciate the beautiful map that's going on here. Like this is some good map work. Like lots of really good map work. Evocative, memorable. Okay. I'm just going to read you the opening paragraph of this book. Because again, one of the things I'm really, really enjoying about R.J. Barker is the way in which he writes and the environment, right? Like, book one, you went 8 pages of the book before you got to a name for a character, even though 2 characters were nominally engaged in a conversation. And it was a description of that conversation, but at the same time it was also a description of the world and a description of who they were as characters. And you just felt so much. Call of the Bone Ships does the same thing. And this is the opening. Also, my man puts a table of contents with chapter header, with chapter titles and page numbers. My man gives us a table of contents. I love a good table of contents. Maps, table of contents, appendices with lexicon, and periodic interludes of in-world songs that kind of go with the feel of being at sea. But also like in-world descriptions of being at sea, which I find lovely. But this is the first paragraph of Call of the Bone Ships, right? Like, this is the first paragraph of the sequel book, right? This is book 2. Waves as monuments, huge and uncaring, crowned in furious white. Freezing salt water ripped across the decks of the Tide Child, grasping careless feet, numbing hands. Wind, all noise and anger, rigging, singing the high-pitched song of rope on the edge of panic, the lone top wings bellied out on the edge of cracking. Ice on the ropes and the decks and the faces of the crew, making every movement treacherous. The bone hull of the ship groaned in complaint at the treatment of the waves. Women and men, wrapped in stinker coats, pulling and pushing ropes and windlasses, tying knots with cold and nerveless fingers. Tired after days of this, weeks of this, a lifetime of this. But no rest, because one moment of inattention was all that was needed, and then the ship would be gone, turned over, bone keel sticking up into the air while the crew tumbled down through the grasping water into the waiting hands of the hag. This was the hag's breath, the North Storm's fury. Like, hi. Remember how this was book 2 in the trilogy? I would like to remind you this is book 2 of the trilogy. You didn't need to go so hard, my man, but you did. Crit, I will keep selling it because I think the books are really, really good. I think they're well written. I think the stories are very good. I love what he's done with the world and how you can be immersed in it and understand everything from context clues, but he still gives you an appendix for terminology that's unique in what he's done. The characters are all very interesting. It's a very good writing of third-person, non-omniscient narrative, and differing, but mostly from a third-person viewpoint from Jaren's perspective. And Jaren is such a... I like Jaren as a character, right? Like, I think it's a really interesting kind of world building that goes into how Jaren as a character can be both walk this fine line, is like, people are like, oh, make comparisons, do all these things, and I don't always like doing that. But I can see, as a reader of a lot of books, I can see where if somebody told me that R.J. Barker kind of was influenced by both Horatio Hornblower and Richard Sharp, I'd be like, yep, I see it. Yeah, I can see how he's done a lot of that kind of, took a lot of that very, both Napoleonic English Navy setting and also slightly earlier kind of mid 17th century or mid 18th century or, you know, late 17th century English Navy kind of piracy world building, and took those two things and kind of used those as influence points. I could see that. I could see where that would be, where if you told me that that was his influence, I could see that. But I think he's wholly unique in how he's addressing things, how he world builds. I also think it's very, very like, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but the world as it's created and how he's created the society that these people live in and how that influences the gender norms and gender relationships and what you do. Like, one of the points, hi, sorry, it's a spoiler. I'm going to give you this big spoiler. The spoiler tag is up. Welcome to Spoilerland. One of the interesting things that he puts in this is the concept that within this culture, men and women can both be serve on the ships, and also can be sentenced to these ships because, you know, ship of the damned. But there's a whole line about how in the law they built in this world, homosexual relationships on ship are entirely acceptable, but heterosexual relationships are not, because no one could be pregnant on the ship. And I'm like, I see how you built this world and how you get there, and this leads to kind of interesting relationship dynamics, because one of the definitions that he puts in the appendix is ship friend, right? Like a lover that you have for physical comfort on a ship that you may or may not actually have affection for, but it doesn't really matter because it's just on the ship. Versus, and monogamy is a very complicated, monogamy is a non-issue in this world, actually. There's whole reasons why that, and I'm not going to get into big spoilers, but it's a very interesting build. And Jaren is such an interesting character for when we both meet him, and then we see where he ends at the end of book 1, and where we begin at the beginning of book 2, and then where we end book 2. Look, I'm very glad I started this series when all 3 books had been published, so I don't have to wait. Because if I had to wait after book 2 for book 3 to come out, I would be feeling something. It would be interesting. It would be frustration. It would be, when the fuck is this book coming out? Please inform me. Please. No, it's very, very well done. I think it works very, very well. But yeah, so taking the spoiler tag off now for people, for the non-spoiler review. Yes, as its own book, Call of the Bone Ships is very good. I don't like to give star ratings. I'm going to on Goodreads because I just kind of like more to keep track. It's not... It's a very interesting position to be in. Book 2 is very good. I think it's a very good story as the middle. In and of itself, it works as a good book. And then the finale, not the finale, the end of the book leads you directly into book 3. and leads you into what will be the final conflict of this trilogy, which I'm going to read for next week. Hi, you knew that, right? Like, you knew that I was going to complete this trilogy for next week. I have all 3 books. I got them. I have them. So yes, we will be reading Bone Ship's Wake for the next week, which is the 13th. And I think it'll be a really good, positive read. I'm looking forward to the conclusion. I am looking forward to R.J. Barker taking a spork to my heart and carving it out and feeling many, many emotions, because there were many, many emotions at the end of Call of the Bone Ships. I feel like the world, like, I'm putting the spoiler tag back up for a brief second. I am fully prepared for this series not to have a happy ending. It's a ship of the damned, right? Like, I am fully prepared, based on the end of Call of the Bone Ships, for the end of Bone Ship's Wake to not have a happy ending. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with a book series does not have to have a all is shiny and roses and happy ending if the ending is just earned. And based on book 1 and book 2, I think that Bone Ship's Wake, if it does not have a happy ending, if this series doesn't have a happy ending, will have earned it. I think it will have a satisfying ending. Yeah. And I'm interested to see, because so far what I've seen from R.J. Barker is that he's written, yeah, you can enjoy a book without a happy ending. I enjoy many books without happy endings. A happy ending can be very subjective. Welcome in. Hi, I'm Prax, your friendly neighborhood TTRPG player, video gamer, and book aficionado. But one of the things a book series has to have a satisfying ending. It doesn't have to be happy, but it does have to be satisfying. And have resolutions, right? Like, you can even have an unresolved book series that is satisfying. Thank you for the follow. Welcome in. But I think this is just prediction now. One of the things I'm predicting is that that it will have which book series is my favorite? Ask me a hard question, why don't you? No, I can tell you. I can tell you 2 series off the top of my head. It depends. If we're being honest, for fantasy, it will be The War God's Own by David Weber. If we're talking about historical fiction, it's the Sharp series by Bernard Cornwell. I have a whole bunch of favorites. Like, if you want one young adult, it will be anything by Tamora Pierce. Just put Tamora Pierce as one of my favorite authors of all time. Romantic fantasy, as in like romantic era kind of style fantasy, would be Valdemar. But yeah, I also like a whole bunch. I just have read. I like books. Books are fun. I do think that R.J. Barker is a new kind of favorite author for me at the moment. But in this case, I am looking forward to reading this one, which is the conclusion to the Tidechild trilogy. And its synopsis. Welcome in, Hawkeye and Raiders. Coldrake says, remember, Prax goes through books almost like breathing, automatic and constant. I mean, that is fair. Welcome in, Raiders. Hope you are doing well. We were just talking about the, about Call of the Bone Ships, which is the sequel series. Oh, thank you for that resub. Appreciate you, Hawkeye. And I'm going to finish this trilogy next week for next week's book club meeting, session, chat, conversation, which is Bone Ship's Wake. And as I was saying, like, based on where we ended book 2 and the way in which this is a ship of the damned. I would like to remind you that the main characters in this book are a ship of the damned. I am fully prepared for a not happy ending in this trilogy. I am fully prepared for R.J. Barker to carve my heart out with a spork, and for there to be many, many emotions. There were many, many emotions in book 2. There were emotions in book 1. There were like some hella emotions in book 1. But it was more of an adventure and kind of setting things up, which was good. Still kind of, as I've decided that R.J. Barker is, I haven't read his first trilogy. I need to go back and do that. This is his second trilogy. I actually found him through his current trilogy, which is the first book had been released at the end of last year, and that's end of 2023, and that is Gods of the Weirdwood. Really, really great. And so far, I am enjoying... Well, thank you for that gift sub time. So far, I've been enjoying the way in which I'm using the phrase, not grimdark, but Grimm's dark, as in old Brothers Grimm, actual style, like, dark fairy tale. The wood is a character in and of itself. In the Tidechild trilogy, the sea and the ship are also characters in and of themselves, and you feel that with the description. Oh, the answer to Booty's question. Do you like to read from your childhood, or did you start like to read as an adult? No, I've always liked to read. I always read. I've always read. My parents were very much supporting reading. And I may have been the kid at school who got into trouble for bringing their own books to school and reading that instead of what we were supposed to, and also reading way above grade level. Yeah, I am the nerdy child who finished Les Mis in translation, I will acknowledge, in like 4th grade. Yeah, exactly, Coldrake. Not all ships of the damned are quirky comedic folk on the Black Pearl from Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Exactly. And that's what this series is. And that's why I'm fully prepared for the Bone Ship's Wake to make me emotional. But based on how book 2 had a very, very satisfying ending to its story, while also setting up the story that will be Bone Ship's Wake in book 3, I'm feeling that the ending, even if it is emotional and quote unquote sad or tragic, will be satisfying, and will be a good story. And for example, I can't read you the okay, Orbit. Hi, this message is going out to Orbit, the publishers, the people who write the blurbs on the back of this book. I cannot read the back of this book without it being a spoiler for book 2. The synopsis for book 3 is straight up a spoiler for the ending of book 2. Yeah, Hawkeye, exactly like that. Exactly like reading War and Peace because you could, or, you know, Crime and Punishment because you can. I can read you this sentence from the spoiler, or from this blurb in the back of this book, and have it not be a spoiler. Yet this is an age of miracles and prophecy. The sea dragons have returned, and who is to say that if you can have one miracle, you cannot hope for another? Like, I don't trust it, because I don't trust Orbit to write good blurbs, as we have discovered for all of these series. Like, I am fully prepared to be emotionally destroyed. There will be death in this book. There's many, many deaths in both of these books, and they are earned. Like, okay. Side note. Entire side tangent. One of the things, and I have said this multiple times in both private chats and on here in public as well, one of the things that annoys me a lot about George R. R. Martin as a writer is that his character deaths are rarely earned. Right? Like, his character deaths are plot points that are kind of bullet pointed in, and then he kind of shoehorns into the story in a way that doesn't feel earned, doesn't feel natural, and just feels like, oh, I needed a character to die here, so let's roll a d20. Oh, wait, you're gonna die now. And it doesn't really address realistically how that affects the rest of the characters in the story. There are... Okay. Hi. These books are about ships of the damned, a bunch of criminals who have been sentenced to death on a ship, who are in a world where their country has been fighting this other country at sea for generations. Like, no one knows exactly how long anymore, and nobody really knows why. That level of eternity, right? There are a lot of deaths in this book, in these books. Each and every one of them is earned. Even the deaths where they're like, okay, this is nameless deckhand number 32. But you know why he died, and the descriptions of these deaths are earned, and the reasons for them to die make sense, right? Like, George R. R. Martin can tell me that he's going to have Robb Stark die in what is in the Red Wedding, which is a recreation of a historical event of a violation of guest rights, right? Like, but it doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel like, and it doesn't feel shocking either, right? It, like, I guess for some people it may have been shocking, but like, it doesn't work. You can have just like his descriptions of the battles are like, and these many people died. I'm like, okay, lots of people died in this battle. On this case, you're like, you're like, okay, this character, who we don't know the name of, but we know is a member of this crew, who is a deckhand. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, again, spoiler alert going up. They don't know how to fire a windlass off of the ship, and they overcrank it, and the line breaks, and literally this giant windlass, right? Like, okay, for those of you who don't know, a giant windlass is a giant fucking crossbow that is used off of ships and in permanent stations. It usually took a crew of 3 to 6 to crank, wind, load, and fire, right? This giant windlass, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and he stands in the wrong place, and the line breaks, and now he's cut in half. I'm like, you didn't really care about this guy 5 minutes ago, but when you get into this description of how he died as a random crew member, you care because it show the description is well written, it feels earned in the moment, and it also serves the story by showcasing how the crew don't know what they're doing and how it's a danger to both themselves and others. Oh yes, I firmly recommend reading as many books as possible in as many languages as you can. It actually really helps you. Um, yeah, exactly. It's literally Coldrake. I read that description. I'm like, oh, this is a scene where, if you've read Horatio Hornblower, Horatio Hornblower, by the way, is a very, very famous and very, very popular English series about a naval officer who starts as a midshipman and goes through the series of books and ends up a commodore. Is he actually promoted to commodore? He's a captain by the end, but he's so there's a description in this of somebody who does not know, random crew member number 5 does not know not to stand behind a cannon once it's fired. Like, it's that same kind of description. And I was like, oh, I see, this builds out the world, this tells me who these people are, this tells me what the setting is like, the world is like. And Booty, if you like reading and if you want to learn more, reading more in English, I have lots of really good series. Um, it really depends on what you like to read and what kind of genre you like to read, and I can give you a list of list of things, because I'm a very prolific reader. I like to read a lot of very, very different things. Most of the time I stick to sci-fi and fantasy as my personal choice, but I also read historical fiction. I read mystery series. I read historical mysteries. I read other genres of fiction. I read nonfiction. Pretty much, if it's, it's what you like to read, and I can give me an example of what you like to read, and I can give you some examples of what to read, of what you might enjoy in English. Knowing, of course, that no list is ever complete, because there are just too many books in the world. That's not true. There are a lot of books in the world that I have not yet read. There are not too many. There are just enough. There can always be more. Yeah, but there's also other... If you like to be more advanced than Dr. Seuss, there are other styles of reading and writing. But yes. For next week, we finish this series. We finish this trilogy, and looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing this day. Coldrake. I donate books frequently to the library. I'm never going to be big enough to have the Library of Congress. No unknown books, just ones Prax hasn't read yet. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Or have not, yet met. But I like I was saying, these books, I'm fully looking forward to the conclusion of this. I think R.J. Barker is a very good writer, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with this world and where it goes. I'm not trusting the synopsis on the back of this book because it wants to make you feel like there's going to be a happy ending. I guess that's possible. It is possible that this trilogy has a happy ending. It is not probable. I'm going to put it that way. It's not probable. So Coldrake asks, for all I have read to date of the Bone Ships, which is book 1 and 2, the Bone Ships and Call of the Bone Ships, do you like the flow of the writer's story? Yes. Yes, I do. I think that the writer, like I was mentioning earlier, I'm sorry, you were not here for it, Coldrake. Call of the Bone Ships is book 2 in this series. Very, very frequently in a trilogy, book 2 is the weakest. because it needs to be both its own story, but also set up for the conclusion for in book 3, right? Like it has to tie into that. And some authors are very, very good at giving you a conclusion in book 1 and then trying to get you onto the start of book 2 and feeling, you know. Okay, there we go. That's what I was trying to do earlier. Kuldrick, I don't feel like Kuldrick says some authors, it's a grind to make it through their writing. I never feel that way with R.J. Barker. I feel immersed. He's very descriptive. He's very emotive. As Crit will tell you, I just read the first paragraph of book 2, which literally you can feel the salts in the air. You can feel the chill. You can feel the water kind of. Like, I was reading through this and just imagining a dragon ship, sailing vessel, sailing through some of those, like if you've seen on TikTok or Instagram or anything on YouTube, those videos of ships in the North Sea or the North Atlantic, right? Like, just gray and heavy, and the waves, and the sea is its own mistress, and how much it doesn't care for anyone. It is its own thing. It's not merciful. You can just be swamped if you're not safe. And the chill in the air and the salt and the just icicles hanging from the ropes and the rigging. And you're like, yeah, I can feel this world and I can breathe in this world. And the author is a very, very good job of writing both descriptively and emotion. One of the things that still strikes me, and is one of the reasons I talk about this series, one of the things I talk about when I mention this series, and particularly in book 1. Hi, this is book 1. I have all 3 of them right here next to me. One of the things I was mentioning is you go 8 pages in book 1. You go 8 pages before a character's name is mentioned. There's a conversation going between 2 characters. There's a description of character's father's death. There's a description of the ship that they're on, the way in which they kind of are at odds, but not really, their initial quote-unquote conflict between the 2 of them. And it's 8 pages before you know somebody's name, and it doesn't feel like it. And it's finally getting to that name feels both earned, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know we went this long without knowing somebody's name. I was just riveted by what was happening. So yes, these are very big books, but they're very good books. And I am looking forward to reading Bone Ship's Wake and having that be finishing that trilogy for next Saturday. Hi, if you can't tell, I firmly recommend you read R.J. Barker. At least the Tide Child series and God's the Weirdwood. I haven't read his Assassins series yet, which is another trilogy, which is his first trilogy. I'm going to try and get that from the library probably later this year. But it's definitely working so far on. I don't like saying an author is an automatic read or an automatic buy, except for Tamora Pierce, because I recognize that there are some authors who might try and be experimental, and not every book, even by an author that you love, might be a book that you enjoy. And so right now what I'll say is so far R.J. Barker has now proven himself to be an automatic look, right? Like if I see an R.J. Barker book is out, I will automatically go and do the first page test, which is my test for reading a book, which is if I read through the first page and it makes me want to turn the page to find out what happens next, that's a book I'm going to read. If I don't feel compelled to turn the page, then that's a book I don't need to read. Simple as that. And because of that, I think, like I said, not every book by every author might be something that you enjoy. I would say, but I feel like R.J. Barker has now earned the right to be an automatic investigate, right? Like, I'll take the time to see what he's doing, what he's going, and you know, if I like it, check it out. If not, we'll move on. Yeah, exactly, Coldrake. Some authors might try a different genre and it doesn't feel comfortable to them. It doesn't feel good. The writing just doesn't work, or they feel like you as a reader feel like they needed a better editor for that. And that's fine. Like that, and sometimes that's, you know, a good thing. And sometimes you're like, not quite me, not quite for me, but good for you. Hawkeye asks, Prax, have you read any of the Fever series by Karen Moyning? Let's find out if I remember what that is. Karen Monig. Okay, no. Author. Search. No. Okay. Karen Marie Monig. Okay. Oh yeah. I know of them. I have not read them. I don't think. Dark Fever being the first book. Yeah, I know of them, but I have not read them yet. Mostly because I've kind of moved away from dark, well, not dark, but paranormal romance, urban fantasy romance. I read in my younger years, I read a lot of Laurel K. Hamilton. And read a lot of Anita Blake and Mary Gentry and Sherilyn Kenyon. And I just got to a point I was like, I'm just going to take a break for right now. Oh no, it's not a problem, Hawk. I'm happy to answer. I just I got to a point I was like, I'm just going to take a break. Cuz I read, how many are if I look them up. If I look up the first book, by the way, of Laurel K. Hamilton's Anita Blake series is called Guilty Pleasured, followed by Circus of the Damned. And I'm just trying to figure out exactly how many books are in this series. I'm trying to find out exactly how many books are in the Anita Blake series. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It is. Karen Marie Moynig is writing a paranormal romance. There are 30 books in the Anita Blake series. I did not read all 30. I read like 15. I did read the first 5 books in the Mary Gentry series, of which there are 9. Like, that kind of tells you how many books Anita Blake has. I'm just like, okay. I kind of got burnt out and haven't gone back yet. I might. If you recommended Hawkeye, I might take a look at it. But we finished. So, yes, that's the Bone Ships series. Conclusion for the end of next week. That's what we're gonna do. Conclusion for the end of next week. For next week. All right, but I also read. Let's talk about mystery for a hot second. Let's go talk about The Mistress of Bhatia House, which is book 4 in Sujata Massey's Perveen Mysteries. Perveen it's set in 1920s India, 1921 specifically, or the end of 1921, the beginning of 1922. It spans a couple months, and it is a very interesting series. It is longer a little bit, but it also, I got it from the library. My library has it. It's also the hardcover. So it might be a little bit thicker because it's the hardcover. It didn't feel that much longer than the others, but I think it actually is. Look, do I have... No. I don't have it right here. But, like, this one is, I think, is longer than the last 2. Maybe by about 100 pages. 150 pages, maybe. In comparison to the other, okay, so Perveen is very interesting. She's in 1921 India. She is a woman who is the first female solicitor in India during the British period in 1920s India. Her family is also Parsi, which means they're Persian and Zoroastrian, living in Bombay. And I stress the religion because this book in particular deals in ways in which the religion is actually kind of important, and the way in which the different religions of the different characters exist becomes important for both the mystery but also the setting of the world. So Perveen and her family are Zoroastrian. They're living in Bombay, which is also there's the dividing line between princely India and the British imperial area. It's very, very interesting and complicated, but it's there. So you've got Perveen and her family who are Zoroastrian. You've got the quote-unquote title character who is the Mistress of the Bhatia House, which is the family that lives in Bhatia House, and it's not a spoiler, it's literally the introduction of the book, beginning of the book. That family are Hindi. There are Muslims. There are the British white Christians. And then there are the Indian Jews in the Jewish tradition. And it's very interesting because that ties into the religion, ties into the drive. Like, the inciting setting point is the ladies of you know, the social, the upper level social circle, professional, like, and noble social circle in Bombay. A bunch of these women are trying to raise money to open a women's hospital, like a hospital for women and children to deal, you know, women specifically to deal with pregnancy and all of these things. And the woman who is one of the driving forces for the doctor, she is a doctor, she's Jewish. And yeah, and Perveen is Parsi, which means she doesn't have the issues with alcohol, pork, or other, well, kind of pork, but not quite as much. And versus the Hindus, who are no alcohol and no meat, and then the Muslims, who are no alcohol made from grains, but no pork, and then you've got the Christians. I mean, so it's a very interesting world. And the doctor who's in this, who's one of the characters in this, she's Jewish. The driving force for this new women's hospital is the Mistress of Bhatia House, and she's Hindi, but other members who are on the committee are white Christian or white English ladies, right? And then who are Christian, and then there are a couple other Muslim ladies, and you're like, it's very interesting to see how much more of a cultural melting pot Bombay was in 1920 than after division and the forced relocation. For those of you who don't know, in 1947, when the English pulled out of India, they decided that they couldn't trust the Hindus and the Muslims to get along, so they forcibly moved families that had been in one place or the other in northern or southern India into what would now become the dividing between India and Pakistan. There wasn't that division before, and they forcibly moved people whose families had been in one place or the other for generations upon generations, and made India predominantly Hindu and Pakistan and Bangladesh predominantly Muslim. And that has not come back to bite us in the ass whatsoever. But this book, I would say, so far is probably... It's not the best mystery in the series. That, so far, for me, has been book 3, The Bombay Prince. But it is a very good mystery. It's a solid mystery. But it is the best to look at the cultures of that make up this city and how they work into each other. You know, I think that Sujata Massey has done a very good job in this book of giving us a better view of how all of these people come together, what their tensions were culturally, but how they also bridged those tensions, how they dealt with a lot of the issues, the feelings, all of that. I think it was a very well done. I think this is so far my favorite book for the history, and for Perveen as a character. It's very obvious that Sujata Massey is getting better and better as she writes. This one came out in 2023. Does our famous Brit boy come... Okay, I have to put the spoiler tag up. Cole Drake, you can't ask that question. Now we can ask that question. Does our favorite Brit boy show up again? Oh, wait, you mean Colin? You mean Colin Sardingham? You mean our sweet little cinnamon roll who wants to draw maps for a living? Colin Sardingham? Yes. Yes, he does. He is in this book. He is significantly in this book. In a way that really feels positive. I think Perveen really grows in this book. In a way that feels... That Perveen grows in this book in a way that I think makes sense. You also get to spend more time with her father, who I have now decided is one of my favorite characters in this series all time. Like, he is just like, yeah, I'm good with him. He is sweetness, and I appreciate him so much. Jean Jamshedji, I believe is how you say his name. I could be wrong. Hi, if you speak any of the dialects of Indian, Hindu, or any of the other dialects that are mentioned in this book, and this book does a really good job of stressing the language. The language is important in this one. Like, it was important in a couple of the others because it kind of tied into the plot, but like this, yeah, except for that one time. Her dad was not so chill in that one time, but it kind of made sense in book 3 when he was not that chill. I kind of thought, but I like him. I like him as a character. He is sweetness. Also her mom, Perveen's mom, is like, I'm just gonna go next door and smack my son upside the head because he didn't do what I said. What do you mean you didn't? Now you want to talk about it? Let's talk. Like, I see how interesting the characters are in this, and I appreciate it. I think the world, I don't want to call it world building because she's working with history, and one of the things that Sujata Massey does a really good job of is researching the history and the cultural world in which she's talking about. There's an acknowledgments in the back, and I'm not going to give any like plot points right here, but this is like the beginning, like this is the first paragraph of the acknowledgments, right? I was inspired by the late Padma Lakshmi Mahata Parikha, who was the founder of the Laxminarayan maternity home and hospital in Kolkata. Very special thanks to her daughter and my stepmother, Manju Parikha, who generously read this manuscript. I probably butchered that. I apologize in advance. Hi, okay. Tangent point, but it's one that I feel that is very important. I have a reading disability. It is called a sound symbol relationships problem. I cannot always make written words make sense as sounds, and vice versa. So reading something out loud that I haven't heard before is very difficult for me. And I apologize if I mispronounce things. Please, please, please tell me, I want to learn to pronounce them correctly. But I want everyone to know that it is not me just not caring. It's me not being able to do it. Yes. Koldrick says, she uses established real history very well, and it shows up smoothly, not peppered in just to pepper it, like you mentioned with George R. R. Martin. Yep. Though the history in this book is really important, and the points in the history of this book are really important, and it ties into the mystery so well, but it also ties into the overarching story of Perveen. And I feel like this is the first book where we really see that you would have to read these in order now. Like 2 and 3 you could kind of read back, you could kind of not really have to read in any order. Like, what's going on with Perveen's family is there and tied to it, but it's not, and like Perveen's like daily life is kind of there, but it didn't miss anything if you didn't read them in order. Based on things that happen in this book, you now have to read them in order. So I feel like that's very interesting. but I also feel like Praveen as a character herself is more herself, right? Like, certain choices she makes in this book make sense. I did not want to scream at her as much in this book. She's still not my favorite character. Like, I really enjoy these books for the mystery and the world building and all of the side characters. And Praveen is kind of like down here. Which is kind of weird when you're reading a mystery series focused on, like, one character is the main focus of the series. But, like, I think that this is the best current option. Okay, well, my bandana fell off, so we're just gonna lose it, and it'll be fine. My hair looks fine. Yeah. It's okay not to like Praveen. I've decided. Like, she is much better in this book. Much, much better than this book. And Coldrake says, I kept thinking it was maybe because, one, I'm not female, and two, I'm not female from a very restricted socio-religious community. But yeah, book 3, I wanted to just sit her down and have a talk. Like, yeah, same. Same. And part of it was in book 1, very obvious that Praveen is your stand-in for the Sujata Massey was trying to use Praveen as both a character and an explanation for the audience about the time period and what's going on. But at the same time, these would be things that Praveen already knew, right? Like, these are things that she already knew, even growing up in a subculture within India. And then it's a very niche world, and it felt like, you already know this. Why are you doing this? Like, why are you asking? Why are you doing this? And we have to acknowledge that Praveen comes from a position of privilege, right? Like, 'cause she's privileged enough to, her father is a solicitor. Her father had gone to Oxford. She, as a daughter, gets to go to Oxford in the 19-teens. I mean, she comes back in 1920 or 1919, whatever, like shortly after World War I. They have money. Like, they have servants, which isn't a surprise given the time period. But it's also like, girl, you are very privileged, and I appreciate what you're trying to do and being proactive with certain women's issues. But, girlfriend, she's a lot better in this book, I would say. A lot better. And I think that's really, I don't want to give any spoilers for the ending, but I think that certain choices that Praveen makes highlights how much she's grown as a character and how much she's developed in her knowledge as herself. Yeah, that is true, Coldrake. It was a very fine point that Praveen and Alice go to Oxford and graduate, but they don't get diplomas from Oxford because women weren't allowed to have a diploma from Oxford even if you graduated in the 1920s. And you're like, really? Okay. But yes, I liked this one. I will probably read some more of Sujata Massey in the future. Right now, that's all. This is the last of the Praveen mysteries that's currently out. She does have another series set in Japan, where there are a whole bunch of a whole bunch of them, and I'm gonna continue to get them from the library. I'm gonna see if any of her her Japan series is in the library. But I would say that this is a very solid book. Like I said, the mystery, I solved this mystery much earlier. But okay, is my spoiler tag up? My spoiler tag is up. Okay. Also, I want to point out, this book needs, for those of you who need a book like this, who want to read a mystery like this, and think it might be necessary, I would say that there's a content warning in this book, that Pervine's, and it's in the, it's in the blurb. Pervine's client in this book is an Aya, which is the female servant who acts as a nanny, caretaker, wet nurse for upper class Indian children. Very common, nursery, whatever. But it also deals with it also, content warning and spoiler warning, it also deals with issues of consent and sexual assault and question of abortion. Although that's not really, so like based, like I've read the servant, again, servant class woman in, and yeah, just leave that there. And Pervine is trying to be a lawyer for women's issues and trying to address these kinds of women's issues. So content warning for sexual assault, rape, and abortion, question mark, because I don't want to give that spoiler away because it's kind of plot relevant, but content warning. And it's not, yeah, College Drake, it depicts the issues that serving classes have had, particularly women in the serving classes, have had to deal with for generations upon generations, probably still do in certain places in the world. You, Saudi Arabia and Dubai. But I feel it's important to note that as a content warning. Nothing is shown, but there is an interview in this book where Pervine has to have that conversation with her client. I think it's handled very, very well. I think it's done in a way that really works for the story, but also without minimizing the impact, and acknowledge, and Pervine, and I think that was another point of Pervine's growth, of Pervine being the person who has to interview her client and discuss this issue. And discuss the issue of sexual assault and rape with her client. In a culture where this serving girl, and that's the other thing you have to remember, is like this Aya is probably in her late teens, early 20s at most. I believe it's supposed to be in her late teens. Comes from a world in which if she says anything about that, she's suddenly unmarriageable. Her family will reject her. There's a lot of stigma attached to being the victim of sexual assault in this way. And I think the book handles it very, very well. I think Sujata Massey handles it in a really not good, I don't want to use the word good way, because, like, again, it's not a word you want to put here, but appropriate way. And it is not, well, it serves the plot, but it's not gratuitous. It's not the entirety of the plot. It ties to other issues that are going on in the book, and it ties to Exactly. I'm not going to give away that spoiler, but it's not what you're thinking, Coldrake. Um, Although it's not exactly what you're thinking. But yes, again, supporting her family, coming from a good household, all of these things. Um, it's addressed in a way that I think works, both historically and culturally, and it shows a very good case of an interview with a victim, um, in an appropriate way. Now, I can't. I am not. Yeah. Yeah, so there's upstairs downstairs points in this one, Coldrake, that you are correct, but it's not. It's. I will give you the spoiler. The sexual assault does not occur within the household, but does occur to a servant. I'll just put it that way. But it is not the anyone in the household who is. Spoiler alert: no one in the household is part of this. And I think that's an important point, right? Like this is a case of where there are lots of reasons why things happen the way they do, and um, it's handled thoughtfully and intelligently, and a really good case, like I said, a really good case of interviewing the victim, and also a case of where Perveen shows her growth as a lawyer who wants to work on women's issues when she has to listen to what her client wants. Right? Like it becomes a really big important point of what the client, in this case the victim, wants to do about this issue versus what Perveen, who is this forward thinking feminist progressive, what she thinks is the appropriate thing to do in this case. And how Perveen has to grow and have this self awareness about it's not about what she wants, it's about what her client wants. And I think that's a really, speaking as a future lawyer, also a very important point in this book, that Perveen really comes into understanding what she has to do and how she has to work with her clients. And I'm not going to give any more conversation because I'll give away the plot of the mystery. And I don't want to do that because it's a really good book. And as you can tell, yes, I've been getting these from the library. I'm really happy to support my local library. The reason I got all of the Bone Ship series is because I had gift cards to Barnes & Noble. But I think, if you want to read them on your library, you want to have them on, I don't know if they're on Kindle. If you have anything on Kindle Unlimited, use that. Excuse me. All of those kind of things. Okay. So, yes. The Mistress of Bhatia House, very good. I see how Sujata Massey is growing as an author in this genre. Oh, we'll get to that, Coldrake. We haven't finished the reads that we've done. I have part of the new series that I'm going to get to that when we get to what we're reading for next week. But I want to talk about the conclusion. Wait, is Ancillary Sword? Right, Ancillary Sword. Okay, so Ancillary Sword is book 2. Ancillary Mercy is book 3. And I want to talk about, and I read Ancillary Mercy for this week, and I read Ancillary Sword for the week, Christmas, the 23rd. There we go. I want to talk about them together because I also want to talk about how Ann Leckie deals with this series, and I want to talk about how, and this is a point I want to contrast with specifically what I have read so far of the Bone Ships. So I don't have book 1 with me because I loaned it to a friend this week so that they could get started and be like, here, read this. But book 1 is Ancillary Justice, and then it's Ancillary Sword, and then Ancillary Mercy. Hey, Rob, welcome in. Cyberpunk Uncensored. Cybernation Uncensored. How are you doing? How's life going for you? So perfect timing, actually. We're about to talk about science fiction. And the Ancillary trilogy, or the Radikai, I guess is how they're called, trilogy. And I want to talk about books 2 and 3 together, specifically because I feel like, and this is what I was talking about with the Bone Ships, that it's very hard to write a trilogy where book 2 can be its own kind of thing, right? Like, book 2 in the Tidechild trilogy, you've got the first book is the Bone Ships, and then the second book is Call of the Bone Ships, and Call of the Bone Ships is very, very good about being its own complete story while setting up the overarching arc conclusion that will be in the third book, which is The Bone Ship's Wake, which I'm going to read for next week. Well, also, you know, being tied directly to the first book. There's a 6-month time jump, there's a new plot, but it's a concrete plot, and it addresses things while also setting things up for the next book. In my opinion, Ann Leckie didn't do that. In my opinion, these two, in my opinion, what she did was Ancillary Justice is its book, is a very good first novel. I loved everything about it. It's a really great novel. I will go back and reread that book a lot. It's so complex that you do need to reread portions of it, particularly to understand what Ann Leckie is doing with language and linguistics in play. Also, what she's doing and understanding the fact that the main character in this trilogy is Breck. Well, that's not quite true. Breck is what they are called in their current meat suit, but what they really are, and what they consider themselves to be, is the AI of a spaceship, a troop transport spaceship that is used to being both the ship and all of the meat suit humans that, like, these were humans. They're called ancillaries, okay? They are basically, spoiler tag is up, ancillaries are bodies that that are wired into the ship that can do things for the ship, around the ship, act as just like opposable thumbs, all of these things that the ship would need. They run maintenance, they serve the officers, they act as, you know, troop, military transport. They are literally part of the ship, but not. They are the ship, but they're like humanoid bodies. And I stress this because one of the points that's important to know is that most of them are, spoiler alert, this story deals with an expansionist empire, and you get to meet Breck, who is called the Justice of Torin, because the ships are, like, in size-wise, are broken up into Justices, Swords, and Mercies, and Breck was the Justice of Torin, and I don't like using it because they don't use it, but at the same time, the way in which Ann Leckie plays with language is to highlight the fact that the Radikai, who are the 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 humans in this world who are part of this expansionist empire, their language is has a single gender pronoun for everything. And so the AI of the ship uses that single gender pronoun when they're talking to people in what is the Radikai language. But when they're talking to people of other cultures who speak other languages, they struggle to understand gender, and sometimes have to stop and correct themselves. Oh, wait, no, you use this pronoun because that's in your language as a thing. And I think I understand your gender presentation to match that. But if I got it wrong, I'm sorry, I'm just a ship. That's Breck. Breck is really great. I like them. They're kind of cool. But an important point about these, as Breck says, to become an ancillary, the humanoid body can't be dead. But you're going to take the human that was probably captured in one of these annexations, conquests, and probably a prisoner of war that has been on literally in cryo sleep for who knows how long. Like, the Justice of Torin as a ship is 1,000 years old. You don't know how old Breck as the ancillary, as in the human portion of this particular ship, the Justice of Torin is, but they consider themselves to be over 1,000 years old because they are part of the AI. Even though the rest of the ship and the rest of the ancillaries have been destroyed, they still think of themselves as having been that ship. They're just, a portion. Now they're kind of trapped in this meat suit and they can't be all that they used to be. But they also remember, vaguely, they don't remember who they were before, because the body, whoever that body was before, the soul, gone. They are basically the content warning for destruction of human identity and really horrible expansionist empire practices. Prisoner of war, taken. And while they are still conscious, which is an important point here, they are still conscious at the time, forcibly connected to the ship with various technology which will basically kill the human being, but leave the body alive, and then have the AI come in and take over the body, while also connecting that meat body to various technology that can allow it to connect simultaneously to all of the sensors on the ship and all of the other ancillaries on the ship and all of these other things that are going on. Also be better, stronger, whatever. I mean, it's hella dark, but it's really compulsory. It's like Hawkeye says, "We are the Borg." I'm like, no and yes, right? Like, the technological, less obvious technological upgrades, and in fact it frequently, it's faster than humans, it's stronger than humans, it's more like the $6 million man but tied to the Borg, and less have to be reliant on the technology to support it, and they can be entirely independent, but they are still part of the ship. It's, yeah. Yes, Crit. Crit has it exactly right. Hello, Meatbag. We are now going to install our operating system to you and remove yours. Thank you for your cooperation. Yep, that's it. Yeah, almost more Cybermen without the external cybernetics. And whoever was in there is no longer there. So the first book, which is Ancillary Justice, it has a very concrete and complete story. And then that story ends. You're like, okay, this is a satisfying conclusion for this book. You set up the beginnings of what could be an overarching plot. You've come to that overarching conclusion. And now you're setting up the sequel. Okay, well, you've got the sequel, which is Ancillary Sword, which is book 2. But this is not really book 2. It's book 2 part A, and then book 3 is book 2 part B. This, in my opinion, Ancillary Sword and Ancillary Mercy are just parts 1 and 2 of the same story. And this is a case of where I think it would have probably been better served if they were one book. You could split it up into part 1 and 2. It does not feel like 2 is separate enough as a book to be its own complete book. Now, other people may disagree with me and have different opinion, and that's fair. I you know, if somebody reads them, let me know what you think. Or if you have read them, drop a comment either in chat, or if you see this goes up on YouTube, drop it on the YouTube chat or comments. But like, in my opinion, these 2 books are really one. And the story that they're telling is a through line through books 2 and 3 that is nominally connected to book 1, but isn't really. Book 1 is its own story. Book 2 and 3 they're together are a story, and they're connected, and you know how they're getting there, but it doesn't feel like a trilogy of both overarching. Well, I mean, the overarching plot is there. I don't want to negate that. The overarching plot is there, and it's set up, in book 1 with the end of book 1. But the overarching plot that's set up in the end of book 1 is the plot for books 2 and 3, right? Like, there is no independent plot for book 2 that would keep it as its own thing. And sometimes that can be a problem. You know. And I think I also think, having read all 3, I enjoyed them. I really appreciate them. Book 1, I think, is the best. Book 2 and 3, as individual stories, are kind of weak, but as a joint story are good. I appreciate what Leckie did with the ending of book 3, but I would not say it's a satisfying ending. I feel like, honestly, the end of book 3, if you take, this is what I think. Book 1 is its own beginning, end of its story, concluding of its own story, beginning of the trilogy, setting everything up. If you consider books 2 and 3 to be a joint story, which is what I consider them to be, whether or not Leckie intended that, I consider them really to be one story, and the way the story is written for them really to be one book. If you consider that, I would say that this is book 2 in a trilogy. And it ends in a way that's kind of setting up a book 3. And Hawkeye asks a very important question. Not the ending you wanted, or not just not done as well as you'd like. Yeah, and Cole Jake points out, it's like, we're back to what I was talking about earlier, where not all endings have to be happy endings, but they should be satisfying endings. And I will literally, I think this is a case to explain this well enough. I literally have to read you, I have to read you this sentence from the last page of the book. Okay? This is the last page of Ancillary Mercy, which is book 3. If you don't want a spoiler for this portion of the book, tune out now. Check out. I will not be upset. I will take the spoiler tag down when I finish this statement. But to understand what I'm trying to explain here, and what Leckie did, and what I guess she was trying to do was a very particular thing, and I don't think it worked. And spoiler warning for 3, 2, 1. No real endings, no final perfect happiness, no irredeemable despair. I said to Uran, that should do. Let's go in and have supper. In the end, it's only ever been one step, and then the next. Like, I get it. I get it. She's trying to set up the fact that the character has such an outlook that it's not about the end of the story, it's about continuing on, and there is no ending because this character will continue on and just keep going one step in front of the other and moving on to what the next thing will be. I get that. However, this story literally leaves so many plot threads. Well, that's the thing is, like, so the Ancillary, I'm looking for the first book and it's not here because I loaned it to a friend. So the first 3 books are a trilogy, and then there are 2 more books, one of which was published in November of 2023, that are tied to this universe, but they're not direct sequels to this story. And, like, I get it. You're trying to play with everyone's expectations and looking at, like, continuity and pushing the idea that the book will, you know, the story of these will keep continuing and the world will continue, and your own story is nominally insignificant at the end of things, and there is no happy endings, there are no conclusions, it just is one day at a time, moving forward. But you've set up 2 fucking wars in this book, and you haven't given me any idea of, like, anything. 2. Not 1, but 2. Also introduced a character that is from a 3,000 years ago civil war. So you're referencing, like, major societal upheavals and plot points that the character is trying to address and deal with, and is not just like, hi, I am a guard in this world and I have to live with this world and the society won't change and I just have to live with it. You literally had this character shatter some of the society and point out other points in which the society was already breaking and be a focal point for massive societal change. And you're like, okay. You have an issue that literally is, like, just gonna be, hey, like, all of the plot is hanging out. It's like getting to the end of the 2 towers and never dealing with the ring. That's it. That's literally the point. It's like, oh yeah, sure, we had this, you know, we dealt with Helm's Deep. Okay. Okay. You know, and then at the same time also knowing that Gundor is calling for aid Frodo and Sam are on the way to the volcano to drop a ring in it, and and finding out that Merry and Pippin are having some Ents destroy a bunch of shit. Like, you know, all of this shit is happening, and you stop. It's like, you don't even get that, Coldrake. Like, you don't even get the, oh yeah, he walked in and it's like flashback from anything else. It's like, okay. Like, I get what she's trying to do. I get the fact that she's trying to showcase this inevitability, and very much has been very much tied to this very interesting thought and experiment. And I haven't read the other two books in that have been released in this universe. One of which deals with the aliens that are also been discovered that the humans have a treaty with because of reasons that are kind of important, and possibly maybe the impetus for what, and one of the things that happens in these two books may be an impetus for a war with these particular aliens. So, like, we're switching to a point of view character that deals with them. Okay. No, there are like 3 alien species that humans have encountered in their spacefaring days outside of this massive expansionist human empire. So at one point or another, like, there's... Okay, the spoiler tag is up, so I'm going to keep going. So the way this world is built, what you find out through reading these books is that there was a home planet called the Radikai and the Radikai system. And 3,000 years ago, or a little bit longer, there's a civil war over who has authority, and the person who ends up being the emperor, and I want to kind of like, I want somebody who reads a lot of Warhammer 40k, because I don't read a lot of Warhammer 40k. I know enough. I know the general plot of what's going on, but I don't know specifics about who's doing what lately. Like, yes, welcome to Spoilerville. The spoiler tag is up. I have left the spoiler tag up. We are in Spoilerville. So, like, I want to talk to I should talk to Pope. I'm going to talk to Pope. I'll be like, hey, Pope, want to come on, read this series, and then come back to me and we can talk about this. I might do that. I might tell him that. I might ask him to do that. But, so we can talk about how it compares to Warhammer. But one of the things is, so 3,000 years ago, you have the Radikai home world, and the home system, and the person who will eventually become the emperor, the Lord Emperor of the system for the last 3,000 years, they have a civil war and they end up on top, right? Like, they win. And then they create a Dyson sphere around the home system and begin expansionist empire, annexing other human worlds and colonies that have existed on planets far and away. And so you have this concept of, like, the real Radikai live within this Dyson sphere and nobody knows, like, but we're dealing with the outer edges of this empire. And this human, so you've got this expansionist human empire who's also trying to take over other human societies. And then there are 3 other alien species that we don't really know a whole lot about, but the one that gets mentioned the most are called the Praxegar. And there's a treaty that was formed 1,000 years ago because of events that happened. And that would be a spoiler. Like, I'm not going to get that spoiler because of events that happened. And those events cause the snowball effect that lead to our main characters, lead to Breck becoming Breck the Ancillary, as being only Breck the Ancillary, and no longer having the body of Justice of Torin, which is the ship. And so the other book in this that was released is called the, what is it? It's the Translation Slate, which is, I haven't read yet. I have not read yet. But Translation Slate is focusing on one of the translators, which is what they're called, of the Praesegar, who are this alien species, and the translators are nominally human in appearance, but they are not human, and they translate for the aliens, and they are the part that are in kind of like the quote-unquote diplomats for dealing with this human empire. And okay, so you literally have set up you get to the end of this and you're like, okay, and but you've started a civil war within this humanist empire. You are addressing some of the issues and cultural issues dealing with fully sentient and sapient and AI, and but also how those AI may or may not have been shackled and are no longer shackled, and also may have started a war, an intergalactic war with an alien species that was so powerful and no one really understands because they're that alien. Like, they just would occasionally come across a human ship and rip it to pieces because they didn't think humans were significant. Like, that's the term used. Humans had to become defined as a significant species before this alien species would consider them worth even talking to, let alone forming a treaty with. Okay. This isn't a few dangling plot threads to set up maybe your next trilogy. This is book 2. Where's book 3? And I get it. Anne Leckie specifically tells us in the end of book 3 that there is no ending. It will keep on going. But and Koljak says, once you go to Dyson Sphere, you've made yourself a galactic hermit. Yes. Like, you have an entire fleet of military ships that were designed for an expansionist empire, and the fleet requires bodies because of the concept of ancillaries to run the ship, which means you also kind of need to continually be expansionist, because if you have citizens can't become ancillaries unless they're convicted of a capital crime, but even then there's the concept of re-education and ways in which you could do things like that, and you're like, okay, so citizens aren't ancillaries, but previous soldiers on the other side of an annexation could become ancillaries, but nope, we might have questions about that now, and that you've got a whole bunch of, like, there's a lot of dark stuff in this series, and I love it. I just don't like the ending. And I know it's supposed to be a point at which the author is saying there is no real ending, you just have to take the next day at a time. I get that. But hi, Coldrake. That's kind of the synopsis of book 1, although without the full brain flush. It's literally on the back of the book, so I don't feel bad about giving this spoiler. Breck was the Justice of Torin and is now trapped. The ship has been destroyed, and the only part of the AI of that ship that's left is Breck, which is a portion. Breck being the alphanumeric, because they use different company names. They call them decades, but they're basically company names. So we would use Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, or Alpha, Beta, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot. They're using Breck is for the B, right? Obvious. And Breck is 1 Breck 19. Or, well, Breck is what they, is, you know, and they're the 19th portion of this particular portion of the decade. And you're like, okay, the synopsis on the back of the book is the rest of them have been, the rest of its existence has been like body container. I mean, because it's the AI, right? Like the character is the AI, has been destroyed, and they want revenge. They want to deal with what destroyed them. And they are now like an unshackled AI. So, like, okay, that's book 1. And it's book 1 is finding out what happened to the Justice of Torin, how you ended up in this place, and also meeting other interesting characters, one of which is Cy Varden. Cy Varden is such an interesting human, and you like, God, you're an asshole, but I still appreciate you, but you're a dick, man. Like, Cy Varden is a 1,000 years old human who served on the Justice of Torin, or like 700-year-old guy who served on the Justice of Torin, who the Justice of Torin didn't really like because he thought he was a little nepo baby entitled elitist shithead, but at the same time recognized that this little entitled nepo baby elitist shithead was a very good soldier, and so appreciated him as a good soldier, just didn't like him as a person. Now, Cy Varden has been unfrozen and found, and Breck is like, well, fuck. I need you. I don't always like you, but I need you. Okay, come on. And Cy Varden, who is 700, 800 years out of his time, is like holding on by a thread, and the only thing he's holding on to is this portion of a ship that he served on when he was a teenager. And now he's in his 30s. Like, physically in his 30s. And you're like, yeah, okay. And, like, the plot is really good. It's a generic kind of plot point, but it's so well done because of the, you know, the ideology of Breck, who is this massive ship AI, and at the same is at one time the massive troop transport ship, and also a large number of the soldiers on this ship, a large number of the maintenance crew, the commissary crew, workers on this ship. They are just like, you can have the ship have all of be like, and that's the thing, one of the things that I think Ann Leckie does a really good job of highlighting is like, there's a depiction in this book, is a flashback of the Justice of Torin being a troop transport in orbit above this planet that is being annexed, and having, you know, the various ancillaries, we'll use that term because that's the term that Ann Leckie gave them, the various ancillaries being, you know, in this city, giving you know, all of this information from all of the bodies that the ancillary, you know, all of these ancillaries that the Justice of Torin has are simultaneously providing information across the planet to the Justice of Torin, which is sitting in orbit above the planet and is also providing information. So you can go from, you know, having the Justice of Torin as the ship answer questions as the ship for some human officer in the break room about, like, well, what's the you know, what is the status of the, you know, the, what's the status of the hot water heater? When is that going to get fixed? And at the same time also be in a temple receiving, talking to various religious leaders of this currently annexed planet, while also being on another street in the capital and talking to the political leaders of this planet, while also providing military backup for a human officer who's leading a raid against an insurgents on the far side of the planet. And you're just like, you did a brilliant job of highlighting the vastness of what this AI is capable of and understanding that this is not a human, right? Like, this main character, not human. Not human at all. Not even a little bit. Could maybe pretend to be, and has on occasion pretended to be human, but really, at the end of the day, is not. It just isn't. And I love it. And I think it's a great story. And I think it's brilliantly done. But where's the end? It was not a satisfying ending to me. Now, as we've been saying, I've been giving little points at which what did I want? Why did I highlight this one? Okay, so here's a really good, here's the sentence. Yeah, I did tell her. Spoilers are coming. Oh yeah, spoiler. Well, 1 second. The tyrant had said our backgrounds were similar, and in some ways they were. She was, and I had been, composed of hundreds of bodies all sharing the same identity. From that angle, we were very much the same, which some citizens had noted, although only relatively recently, within the last 100 years or so, during arguments about the ancillaries' uses of ancillary, about the military's use of ancillaries. It seemed horrible when one thought of it happening to oneself or a friend or a relative, but the Lord of Radek herself underwent the same, was arguably in some ways the same sort of being as the ships that served her, so how could it possibly be as bad as detractors claimed? Ridiculous to say that all this time the Radek had been anything less than entirely just? One of a triad, that word. Justice, propriety, and benefit. No just act could be improper, no proper act unjust. Justice and propriety, so intertwined, themselves led to benefit. The question of just who or what benefited was a topic for late-night discussions over half-empty bottles of arak, but ordinarily no Radakai questioned that justice and propriety would ultimately be beneficial in some God's-approved way. And now I will take the spoiler tag down. So yes, I am glad I read that series. I will look for the other 2 books in that universe. I'm probably not yet. Maybe not till later. But I think they're very good. I just was not satisfied with the ending. So, that's all the books I read for this week. And the series that I've read. Let's take a short break. And then when we come back... Yeah, fair. Let's take a short break, and when I come back, we'll talk about what we're reading for next week, and then our plans for the 27th for our group community read-along. But take the time, stretch, bio, refresh, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you in just a little bit, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you're refreshed, you stretched, you bios, you know all the important things. You know, all of those kind of things. Crit brings up a really good thing. We were talking about, we talked so far about the books that I did read for this week and what I felt about them and what I thought about them. Wait, am I muted? Oh, you had me muted for the entire point where the spoilers were still up. Okay, that's fair. that's fair. That's fair. Hold on, everybody. I've just been informed I have to go do something. So I will be right back. I'll put you back on this BRB screen, and we'll let you I'll be right back, everybody. Give me a sec. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. I had to go run the dog out. That's all. It was snowing. It is snowing. But we had talked about all of the books I read for this week, and then we're going to plan what we're going to read next week. And Lysander asked what was today's theme. Theme. Continuing series that I started last year, I guess was the theme. Or as Time says, our host's insanely, almost preternaturally voracious reading ability. That might be fair. That might be fair. So yeah. So first thing that I will be reading for next week, which is already, like, I've started putting things into my calendar. Is The Bone Ship's Wake by R.J. Barker. That is the third and final book in the Tide Child series. I've basically been, yeah, for those of you who were here earlier, I really, really enjoyed this series. I enjoyed book 2. I thought it was a really good example of doing book 2 right in a series where the book itself has its own conclusion but sets up really well for the next book in the series. But that will be The Bone Ship's Wake. And Crit was saying, oh, I wanted to remember this. Crit was saying, I wanted to highlight this. Crit Witch says, by the way, if you don't have a book at the library and at your library and want to try to support local smaller distributors, see if they have a storefront on Bookshop. Also important. Bookshop being a really great platform that helps smaller independent distributors get to kind of quote-unquote local without using Amazon. But one of the things I do for all of the VODs that have gone up so far, for these book club chats, all on the YouTube, I'm making a really good point of highlighting individual author pages and linking to the author page or the page for that particular book in the description on the YouTube VOD when it goes up, because that way people can choose how they want to get that book. If they want to try and get it through their local library, support a local bookstore, see if a secondhand bookstore has it. Some of these are newer releases, so they might not be in secondhand bookstores yet. If it's an audiobook they want to check out it out through Libby or Hoopla, or if they have it on Kindle Unlimited and they have a Kindle, if they want to do it that way. However people want to choose and get those books. I firmly support supporting your local library. A lot of the... I got the Bone Ship series because I had a lot of Christmas Barnes & Noble gift cards. Full disclosure. Now, I probably, after reading the first book, knew I was going to buy all 3 books because it was just that good. And when I know that and I want to support a book series like that, I will go ahead and buy it to support the author. I myself don't usually do a lot of audiobooks. It's a struggle with my learning disability to hear something that I've never heard before and make it make sense. People talk about this thing called that they're talk about for immersion reading, where they read the physical copy and then listen to the audiobook at the same time, and that would just I can't do that. Like, there are people who do that, and that helps them like focus in on what exactly they're reading. They're not distracted by other environmental factors. I'm like, I can't. I can't have that level of sensory input. They're 2 very, very different senses, and I can't, just not me. But if you can do it, go ahead. I am looking forward to concluding this trilogy. I have so far liked I've so far liked all 3 of the other books that I have read by this author a lot. And I'm going to be, yeah, Lysander, that's part of my problem is, like, even if you tried to play it at like 1.5 speed or 2 speed, I don't think I would be able to keep, like, I read faster than people talk, and that would just not work. Not be a thing. But so far I've really liked every book that this author has written that I have read of theirs. And I'm looking forward to the conclusion. And as I said earlier, I am fully prepared for this conclusion to not be a happy ending, but it will probably, based on the way I've read things so far, be a very satisfying ending, and an earned ending if it is a tragic ending. So that is the first thing I'm going to read. Like that, I might read tomorrow and get it out of the way. Just because I was like, I finished book 2, I want to read the next book, but I promised I wouldn't, and therefore I was held off until we could talk about it, and now I'm going to read it for next week. The other book that I was really looking forward to, and I got with my Christmas money, Christmas gift cards, is June Her's The Red Palace. Now, this book is technically, I guess, a YA mystery, horror, historical, that I have been really looking forward to because I've started following the author on, we're slowing Prax down. I mean, I read other things. Oh yeah, there's a quote from Robin Hobb in Lysander. Like, Robin Hobb has blurbs on all three of the Bone Ship series, and I don't want to say I like Tide Child, which is the series for R.J. Barker, better than the, what is it, the long, what is the Robin Hobb shit? Oh god, it's gonna bother me now. Hobb books. What? Give me the title of your books. The Ship of Magic. What is the title of the series? I mean, the Farseer trilogy, the Live Ship Traders. Sorry, Live Ship Traders. I think I like. Here's the thing: I will have to wait until the end of the trilogy to make an opinion. But right now, I like Jaren, who is the main character in the Tide Child series, better than the main characters in the Live Ship Traders. I liked the Farseer. Like, the Farseer trilogy I really liked. And Fitz and the Fool I liked. And for Robin Hobb. I didn't like Live Ship was just kind of at the bottom. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this ending and seeing where I kind of rank it afterwards. And seeing what I feel about this series afterwards, after it's finished. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it'll be really, really good. Everything is, so far, it's been very enjoyable. And I feel like it fits. As I said earlier, I'm calling this author's writing style, at least for the Tide Child and his other series, which is, that I started in 2023, which is, Gods of the Weirdwood. Grimm's Dark, not Grimdark. Grimm's Dark, as in the Brothers Grimm style dark fantasy, and I think it works really well. A much more dark fairy tale, but not quite. Not quite. But we're talking about June Her and the Red Palace. This is a mystery set in 1758 in Joseon, I have to get somebody to pronounce it for me so I know exactly how it's pronounced. In Korea in 1758. So it's a historical fiction set in the Red Palace, and it, like, I've been following this author for a while. I've read, oh, what is it? I've read another the other book by them, which is, come on, load. Oh, I understand you're tired because it's, Silence of Bones and Forest of the Stolen Girls, both of which were really, really good. She's very, very good at taking taking Korean history and setting a mystery in it, even to the point where, even if you know the mystery going in, you're here for the story, right? Like, you're here for how so I know the history involved in this book, so I know who the quote, who did it in the whodunit, but I'm looking forward to reading it even without that. Because I think the book is so well written, or at least my projection is so well written. Also, can we take a minute and appreciate the beauty of that cover? Can we just take a minute to appreciate the beauty of that cover? To enter the palace means to walk a path stained in blood. If you enter the palace, you either die or you survive and become another monster within its walls. 1758, Joseon. There are few options available to illegitimate daughters in the capital city, but through hard work and study, 17-year-old Haeyoung has earned a position as a palace nurse. All she wants is to keep her head down and do a good job and perhaps finally win her estranged father's approval. But Hyeon, Hyeon, and I need somebody who speaks Korean to tell me how to pronounce that. Yet again, I would like to remind everyone that I have a literal learning disability where written words that I've never heard before, I can't say. So somebody who speaks Korean, please tell me how that's pronounced and I will improve. But Hyeon is suddenly thrust into the dark and dangerous world of court politics when someone murders 4 women in a single night, and the prime suspect is Hyeon's closest friend and mentor. Determined to prove her beloved teacher's innocence, Hyeon launches her own secret investigation. In her hunt for the truth, she encounters Yeojin, a young police inspector also searching for the killer. When evidence begins to point to the crown prince himself as the murderer, Hyeon and Yeojin must work together to search the darkest corners of the palace to uncover the deadly secrets behind the bloodshed. So, again, I know the history involved, so I know who the murderers are, who is the murderer, but I'm still going to read this book because I want to know how they get there and what they do and where these things come from. Like, I think this author Jun-Ho is a very, very good author and a good writer and is just great at presenting the history involved while also giving you a really good mystery, which is good. And I'm looking forward to it. She is from South Korea, but raised in Canada, goes back to South Korea for high school, is a full-time writer, lives in Canada, so she writes in English about Korean history. And this is the English version of this book. I love this cover. I love the beauty of this cover. I think this is a beautifully evocative cover. I love the little, who did the art on this? Okay, who did the art? Interesting. Okay, so it doesn't say who did the art, but it does give a book design by Liz Dressner. And technically this is young adult. And, technically Jun-Ho writes young adult novels. I really like them. I think they're really, really well written. I think they're a really good balance between, anyone can really read young adult, but I think they're really well written for and good for both their target audience and more adult readers. But that is the English cover of that book, okay? Let's talk about the Korean edition. Hyun, well, it's not spelled that way. It's spelled Hyeon. I don't know how it's spelled, but this, let me show you. This this is the Korean cover of this book. Look at this. Look at how pretty this cover is. And, does she... Okay, so that's not... Let me see. quickly if I can find her on. Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Let me see if I can find her Instagram reel where she's like showing off the Korean covers, the Korean edition, because there's art on the inside too. There's art on the inside too. Got it. No. Where is it? I think it's this one. Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna send everybody this. I'm gonna post this in chat. I'm gonna share this in chat. Can I just copy this? Let's see if this works. Because their Korean publisher, like, I don't want to get copyright struck. Their Korean publisher created a book trailer for this book. And I absolutely love it. I'm not showing it on screen because I don't want to get a copyright struck, but as June, as the author writes, this subtitled version of the book trailer, me wondering how my book would look if adapted into a Korean drama. My Korean publisher drops this book trailer. This subtitled version is for all the readers who messaged me to say that they'd love to see the Red Palace turned into a K-drama. For now, this is the closest we'll get to one. And I'm like, dude, you didn't have to go that hard, but you did. Like, you did. Where is... Do we have the Korean... Like... I love... This is a book where I will probably... I might actually go online and order the Korean edition, even though I can't read Korean at all, have no basis in understanding it whatsoever, but I will probably go and order that edition just so I can have the pretty one to go with this. I don't usually do that. I usually stick to whatever edition I currently have. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, this is the edition I got it in, so I have to match all of them, whatever. But, like, this is not bad. Korean edition, 10 times higher. Went all the way. Just went all the way. But yeah, so for next week, purchase a dust cover version of that version. I don't think so, because you mean the Korean edition, you mean? Because the Korean edition, I don't think are the same size. Like, the book size is not the same. Either height or, it's not the same height or width. So I don't think the dust jacket would fit. Just based on what I'm looking at. Like, the book is thicker. It's also a little bit shorter. And, like, I get it. It's and there's also interior art in this version. So it's like, I would get it just for both the cover art and the interior art. And, you know, it's a really, really, really gorgeous. also really appreciate one of the things that June Her does is she created a for her version of immersion reading, she created a Spotify playlist for the book, for music to listen to while you read the book, and a Pinterest mood board to kind of also explain the history and give you like historical, like, so you can see what. Here, let's pull it up. Let's look at this. Like, you can see what the people would be wearing and what they look like, you know, what they would be looking like. What? Okay. Stop being weird. So, or you can see this is literally where the places that she's talking about. You know, this is the palace and this is the layout of the palace and these are how the rooms would be set up. These are what the people would be wearing. This is based on the pictures that we have. And here's her dream casting. I support this. Like, I appreciate the hell out of this. Like, this is just perfect. Yes, Crit. This is exactly up my alley. Let's have an entire board depicting who everyone is, so you know what they look like, what they would wear, what their attitudes are. Also, I see your casting choices there, madam, and I appreciate them. I watch a lot of K-dramas. I know who those people are. But I also really, really like, in particular, the fact that it's not just like, hey, these are historical pictures, these are my, you know, fan casts, whatever, but these are also pictures like, this is the interior model layout of the palace. You know, this is a map showing how the palaces would lay out and where everything is and where they were. Like, that I appreciate. Like, so this is really, really, and she does this for every book she writes. So, and then there's the Spotify playlist, which I'm going to listen to when we go. But if we go back to her other book, A Crane Among Wolves is the one that's supposed to come out this year, probably at the end of the year. Silence of Bones, here we go. Let's go with Silence of Bones, which is another book by her I've read. It was her debut novel. There we go. And also have foreign editions have beautiful covers. American edition, it's not bad. I like the ink style painting. I'm not as big a fan of the way the letters are laid out over the painting, however. I think it kind of is, muddles the visuals a little bit, in my opinion. But there's a reader's guide, you know, and discussion questions, pronunciation guides, further resources. Hi, we're talking about historical event. Let me give you research. Here are my citations. Go read about it for yourself. This is a fiction novel and this is a fictional account, but this is a real event, so here, have some more history to go with it. I love that. And then the Pinterest board for this one is, I need to follow. I need to add them as a follow. I need to follow them. But like, look at the beautiful art. Look at the beautiful casting. I mean, like, I appreciate the casting. You know, where are things located? What historical records are you going off of? What, you know, burial rites are you... Also, this one's this one's darker. Deals with a lot of dead bodies. Well, there's a lot of dead bodies in her work. Very interesting stuff, though. But, like, all Korean history that you have, like, this is where things are. Like, I appreciate this. I won't claim that. I mean, I will claim that she is a very well researched, and this is the kind of writer that I enjoy, right? Like a writer who takes the time, and she didn't need to do this. You didn't need to share all of this. I mean, this is something that probably a lot of writers have for themselves and keep, but she doesn't need to share. Like, she didn't need to share all of that with everybody else. And this is a really great part, and I really support the fact that it's like, we need diverse books, kind of helped her start writing. And now she's got, how many books? Mermaids Never Drown, Red Palace, Forest of Stolen Girls, Silence of Bones, and then Crane Among Wolves is the one that's in ARCs right now. But look at this art. Look at this cover art. Like, this is beautiful. I can't wait to read this one. This one's supposed to come out soon. Oh, it's in pre-orders already. Oh, it's pre-orders on Bookshop. That's even better. And then there's Forest of Stolen Girls, which is, I appreciate the aesthetic. I'm not as big a fan of. This is the Korean cover for Forest of Stolen Girls. I like the Korean cover better than the English and French version. Like, not for nothing, I like this art better than this art. But I can appreciate the aesthetic that it was going for. And again, Pinterest board and Spotify playlist. All of the things. And then Mermaids Never Drown, I haven't read yet. Oh, that's because it's a compilation. Oh, I really need to add this. Also, like, $1.50 is not a discount. Mermaids Never Drown, Tales to Die For. 14 young adult short stories from best-selling and award-winning authors make a splash in Mermaids Never Drown, the second collection in the Untold Legends series, edited by Zoraida Cordova and Natalie C. Parker, exploring mermaids like we've never seen them before. A Vietnamese mermaid caught between two worlds, a siren who falls for Poseidon's son, a boy secretly pining for the merboy who saved him years ago, a storm that brings humans and mermaids together, generations of family secrets and pain. Find all of these stories and more in a gripping new collection that will reel you in from the very first page. Welcome to an ocean of hurt, fear, confusion, rage, hope, humor, discovery, and love in its many forms. Interesting. Interesting. We'll have to check that one out, and might add that to our list of things that we will read later in the year. But for next week, I will probably finish this tomorrow, not gonna lie. It's not very long. Like, what, 3? Yeah, it's only 330 pages. And that includes the acknowledgements and notes at the end. But yeah, I think we're gonna read this. I'm going to read Bone Ship's Wake. And then I've got 2 more things I'm gonna read for next week. One of which I'm kind of changing it up because I managed to get something. So I'm going to read 2 things and then we'll go from there. So because I'm reading Red Palace, I'm going to move things around, and I can do that. It's my list. It's my plans. I'm the one reading. The only ones that I leave set in stone are the ones we're going to do as the community reads, and those are on January 27th, and we'll talk about those again in a minute. But there are 2 more books I'm going to read. The first one I want to talk about is T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead. It's a short little novella. T. Kingfisher writes mostly novellas and very short novels, is what I found. And technically, this is a horror ish, but it's horror as like Edgar Allan Poe style horror, or very dark, grim fantasy. Yay, Lysander, you know Kingfisher. This. So two things. One, I saw somebody who I really appreciate, and like one of the reviewers that I watch, Elliot Brooks, who I had put in the chat earlier. Elliot Brooks, I watch on YouTube, very positive. I like them. I like her as a reviewer, and also just as a discusser of books in general. I don't always agree, but that's okay. I don't have to agree, and that's fine. But I do appreciate their style of reviewing and what they tend to read. And sometimes I like them and they introduce me to interesting new things. So the sequel to this is coming out next month. PB, welcome in! Welcome in, Raiders. I am your friendly neighborhood Prax. Welcome to the channel. Use she, her pronouns. And tonight we are talking about books. Specifically right now, books that I'm planning to read for next week for our book chat. Hey Nilly, welcome in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How was gaming tonight? Let's give a shout out to the wonderful PB Plays Inside. There we go. That worked. But yeah. So Elliot Brooks was talking about how the sequel, we're talking about What Moves the Dead, which is by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher writes a lot of fairy tale-esque, dark kind of novels. Welcome to the Raiders of the Library. Good on you, Tim. Good on you, Time. I appreciate that one. That was a good one, Time. And I read Nettle and Bone. I liked Nettle and Bone. Didn't love it, but I did like it. And then what's the Hedgerow one? Thornhedge. I did like Thornhedge. Thornhedge was interesting. But I didn't know about this one. This one, I guess. And then the sequel to this is supposed to be coming out in February, which is What Feasts at Night. And I was like, well, okay, I'll check this out at the library. And I was fully planning to check it out at the library. However, when I was in Barnes & Noble after the new year, spending my Christmas Barnes & Noble gift cards on the Bone Ship trilogy, I happened to discover that What Moves the Dead is this month's Barnes & Noble Book of the Month. Which means that if you are in the Barnes & Noble that has a Starbucks in it, and you buy something at the Starbucks, and it could literally be just a single cup of coffee, and this book is $5. It's like, literally, this is $5. Okay. Yeah, A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking is indeed also by Kingfisher. Is that? But this is, so I was like, okay, for $5, I will actually buy the book. And it's a little short novella. I don't, whatever. We'll see what happens. I'm a friend of the ushers, I say. The servant nodded gravely at this information. Would you like to come inside? Yes, I said, aware that I was lying. I did not want to go into that tired house dripping with fungus and architectural eyes. But Madeline had summoned me, and here I was. Like, just the back of that. Just the back of that. I mean, look at that cover. Can we talk about creepy taxidermy and fungus? So, so this book is like an Edgar Allan Poe locked room kind of mystery kind of thing. I'm here for it. I don't usually read a lot of horror. It's just not my genre that I like. But I think I might, I'll give this one a shot and see what I think. I did like Nettle and Bone, but I liked Thornhedge, so we shall see what comes of this. And it's short, right? It's only 158 pages. Yeah, exactly. That's Thornhedge, her newest book, which was the retelling of Sleeping Beauty from one of the fairies' point of views. Yeah, don't worry, so am I. And so I figure I'll give this a read. It's not very long, probably take me a couple hours, most. But I was like, yeah, let's grab that. And then, to also highlight, the last book I'm going to read, technically this week I'm reading 4, but that's because this is a novella, right? Like, this is nothing. This is a novella. I'll take that in an hour. The last book I'm going to read for the week is actually an indie, self-published book by Catherine Reynolds. Look at the cover. Look at that. It's the first book in the in her Fae series. And for those of you who don't know, Catherine Reynolds is Cozy Catherine on Twitch. She is she is married to Artificer Zero. If you hang out, one of the interesting people. And I've been looking for, I found out about her book series through her earlier in 2023 when she was talking about on Instagram the redesigns and the art she was doing for the cover. FYI, she does her own, fully independent author, does her own layouts, cover art, and interior chapter header art. All of it she does herself. And so I was like, oh, I was gonna, it's after Christmas and I had some Christmas money. I was like, okay, I'm gonna support a local indie author that I know and I really appreciate, and I think they do a good, I've read kind of blurbs. And then Amazon had these on sale. And I think they're still on sale if you have a Kindle Unlimited. I thought like the first book was free or something on Kindle Unlimited. I don't read ebooks a lot. It just is a struggle for me to read books that way. I can read fan fiction online all day. Don't know what that says about me. But actual books is a struggle. I like physical copies of actual books. And it's like, oh, Amazon also has these on sale. Let me go ahead and grab the first 2 of the 4-book series. This is book 2, by the way. So, the blurb on the back of book 1. Death has come to the Fey Woods. The White Witch Marsilia leads a happy life in the Fey Woods of the mortal realm. When a dark entity threatens her home, she seeks aid from an elder witch. Fjell is a dwarven warrior outcast from his society. Honorable and steadfast, he mistrusts those who wield magic. In debt to the elder witch, he finds himself an unwilling companion to Marsilia's quest to save her home. Can the White Witch and the dwarf learn to cooperate before the darkness consumes all that they love? Like, can we just take a minute to appreciate the art on the cover? Art that goes all the way around to the back cover. And for layout purposes, we love a book that puts the series number on the spine. You put the series number on the spine. Mwah. just the little things of layout that make it worthwhile. And, you know, this is also... the Fey Realm series. Yeah, this is the second edition. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books in this series, and then the prequel, which I haven't read, but I figure I'll finish that afterwards. But also, we got a map. We got a map. We could love a good map. Got a good map. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading this. I have seen clips around it, and I also, like I said, it was on sale. Let me see if I can pull it up really quickly. Let me see if I can pull it up a little bit quickly. I mean, it should be relatively easy. Let me see. Okay, here we go. It's actually free on Kindle Unlimited right now. But I will drop the link in the paperback is no longer on sale, but it's well, that's a really long link. Welcome to Amazon links. It's no longer on sale for the paperback, but it is free on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle. There we go. Okay, so that is what I'm going to read for next week. Gonna finish the Bone Ships trilogy with Bone Ships Wake. I'm going to read June Her's Red Palace. I'm going to read the little novella from T. Kingfisher, What Moves the Dead. And then the first book in Catherine Reynolds' series I'm going to read. So that's what I'm going to read next week, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all about. I'm also hope, see what's going to happen. And then for our community read-along, we're reading 2 books that we're going to talk about on the 27th. Those 2 books are Pierce Brown's Red Rising. I wanted to do a new, again, got a new version because I have to do a reread. I'm going to reread this. We were talking earlier about how sometimes books come out with a sequel years later. And, sometimes as you're reading books, even if you're waiting on this, as you're reading the series in order, sometimes there's like as much as 18 months in between versions, unless you're Patrick Rothfuss or George R.R. Martin fans, and then you're stuck waiting forever on series that will probably never be finished. But Pierce Brown released a new book in this series after a certain number of years. I'm like, oh, I remember things a lot, and I read the original trilogy when it first came out, and this first book was published, God, when was Red Rising first published? (2014? 2013? That sounds right. Yeah, so 2013. So this is 10 years old. I want to go do a reread through it. So this is we're gonna do a reread of this. Content warning for murder. And just a lot of murder. So much murder. And Darrow, and then murder. That's this series. So we're going to reread this Red Rising series. And we also are reading the first Cotton Malone Steve Barry's Templar Legacy, which is the first book in the Cotton Malone series. And it is a thriller, kind of historical mystery, kind of better written history version thing than Dan Brown writes. And Cotton is a very interesting character. So this is the two, Red Rising and Templar Legacy. We're going to read for the 27th. We will not have a book club meeting on the 20th. So I will probably be talking about a lot of books when we come to the 27th, in addition to the two books we're reading as community reads along. So that's it. Unless anybody has any questions they want to ask me about the books I've read this week. Anyone want to, or share, or if you have read any of these books, share your opinion. Okay. Well, that's it for tonight then. I'm going to go and crawl into bed and watch it snow and probably read. I wonder which one. It won't be the horror. It won't be the Tea Kingfisher, and it won't be Junior. Those are read in daytime books. Those are read in daytime books, at least in my opinion. So yes, I'm gonna say good night. And thank you all for being here. Thank you all for hanging out with me. I've been your friendly neighborhood Prax. You should hang out. Go ahead, see what you think. Put some of these on your list and let me know what you think. Share a comment in the description. You know, I have a YouTube. Check it out. And if you're over on YouTube, thanks. I see you. I appreciate each and every one of you. Likes, comment, share, subscribe, all of those things. But drop a comment. Let me know what you think. If you want to support the channel, I have a Ko-Fi that's trying to be good about updating on every week at least. You can also find me on Twitter, as long as that exists, at Deirdre Donlan on Twitter, or Prax the Bard over on Hive, Blue Sky, and Instagram. You can also support the channel with merch. And I feel like I should also say that the current merch that's up right now, all of it's being retired at the end of next week. With the end of Carousel Court, everything that's currently up for the merch in the merch store is going to be retired, except for a couple pieces that are part of the Classics on Twitch line. Basically blame Iago, but everything else is going to be retired. So if you wanted a Lord Math, I Survived the Lord Math Experience t-shirt, if you wanted any of the Congratulations on Your Paper Trail, or Vampires for Nixon, now's the time to get it before it goes away forever. Also, tomorrow here on the channel, 8 p.m. Eastern, the finale, the series finale for Carousel Court. It is New Year's Eve 2000. And so much has changed, and so the world has changed, and I can't wait to see what happens. Also, I have to put together a compilation and see if it'll work, because PB oh so kindly went through and clipped every player's reaction to when they found out about the emotional bombshell Trooper dropped on the cast last week. And PB did a fabulous job about that, so thank you again, PB. But we will also be talking a little bit about what's coming up next on the channel and what next games are going to be played on the channel. We revealed that the next thing up is I'm actually going to be a player for the next little while. And Pope is going to be running Pope is going to be running the game, and that will be Mass Effect. So I think that we need to hear Hawkeye's version of "I'm Commander Shepard, and this is my favorite store on the Citadel." Just a few. I mean, can we? Who is excited for that? I just that was in my head, and I was like, we have to actually have that because that would be great. Um, and so, if you've missed out on any of the VODs, you want to catch up, it would be a great thing to do, see what'll happen. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Oh, wait, there's one last thing. Monday. So Sunday night is the finale of Carousel Court. And then Monday, over on Wandering DM's channel, we are back for this premiere episode of the next season. Season 5? 5? We're season 5. Season 5 of Montreal by Night. Vampire the Masquerade, Montreal by Night. And, I'm just gonna say that, Pope has been sitting on a revelation that Simon whispered to him before, at the series finale, in season finale, before Christmas from last season. And we have not bothered Pope about this revelation because the other trooper and I don't know what this revelation is, but we hope to find out on Monday, goddammit. But thank you all for being here. Thank you for hanging out. Thanks for chatting. Thank you, Hawkeye and PB, for bringing your folks on over. I really appreciate it. And if you want to know any more about the stories or books that I've been reading, feel free to check out the VODs over on YouTube. Again, every time I put one of these VODs up, I take the time to put the descriptions, all of the books that I've been reading, all of the books I will be reading, and each of the author pages, so that you can go and decide how you want to enjoy these books, whether that's through the library, through your local bookstore, through interlibrary loan, through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Waterstones if you live across the pond. But thank you all for hanging out. Thanks for being a wonderful, wonderful, supportive audience. And I look forward to seeing you next time.